Chapter 26. Betrayal betrays the betrayer. Unknown. I ate breakfast with Adrian and then he went out, so I had the flat to myself for some blissful time to feel a bit whole again. I was going to take off a part of this hole. I asked Adrian if he had clippers. He said he only had a beard trimmer. On inspection, I figured it'd do the trick. That first bit, as you position the clippers in the middle of your forehead and draw them through, giving yourself a reverse mohawk, is so satisfying. The rest of my thin hair was surprisingly hard to shave off. The trimmer worked like a charm, but I just had too much hair. I filled the sink with it, then stepped into the shower cubicle to drop another soccer ball-sized pile on the floor. I'd never seen what the colour of my hair was at the back of my head, where the sun couldn't touch it. It was a deep, rich, dark brown with reddish tinge to it, like it had had a burgundy rinse through it. I got a slight pang of regret when I saw this. Essentially, I knew it had to be done. I hadn't had a trim in decades, just leaving it to grow like a weed. It had stopped growing any more length because it was probably all split ends right up to the scalp. That would have doubled the volume of it. There must have been a whole lot of air around each strand as it all squished down to the size of a rock melon when I put it into a bag. I dumped it directly into the wheelie bin, hoping no one was going to nick it. I was a human Pokemon target after all. Maybe they could use my hair against me. I guess that was the gangsters area, not these chronically online tragics. I walked out to my van to grab something. A tall, fit gay guy stood on the road in front of the apartment. He was on his phone looking worried. I called out hello in case he was a player. He reticently said hello back, looking back to his phone. Trouble in the gamer world? I hoped so. My next trip out to my van was my final one. I was taking off. Adrian was walking down the footpath towards me. Wow, you did it. You look disguised. This last bit full of fake encouragement. I obviously didn't look that different, probably just worse. I knew my appearance didn't dictate how people found me. I did it to look less like my IBA footage. I was going to dress masculine from now on. 4B, forever, for me. I went out Western Sydney Way to get to the highway to Canberra. Everything seemed quite normal at first until it wasn't. I could sense that cars were really trying to get up and around me. A real tell was a boomer Arab male who put his nose across me while I waited in a long line at a traffic light. He was going to cross and drive up the wrong side of the side street he was trying to get into. A car that sat at the head of the side street even backed up to get out of his way. I wasn't in the position that would have blocked him off. If he'd have just gone up a bit further, he could have passed into the street behind me. I put my hands up in the air, indicating that I couldn't do anything. There were cars up my ass and he was in front of me, so I couldn't move. He turned across in front of me, stopped and rolled down his window. He was going to abuse me. I leaned on my horn as hard as I could. He rolled up the window and drove into the street, his face in a panic. I kept my hand on that horn as I drove up to the lights. Let that be a fucking lesson to anyone else who wanted to try to block me in. I pushed the central locking button. Stopping for juice in a servo, an Arab couple walked into the filling bays without a car but looking at their phone, trying to locate the Pokemon. They didn't locate me though, they just seemed to be looking at a location on their phone. Another Arab male drove in a little car and he seemed to be with them. I then saw another Muzzo couple who'd been in front of me before double back and come into the servo. I was starting to notice license plates, since everyone was driving generic-looking cars that are the chosen fave among that demographic. I looked at the fucking Arab driving, pointed and laughed at him. I'm out of here, dickhead. On the crowded roads of Western Sydney, it was hard to tell if I was being tracked or just in the middle of Sydney morning peak hour traffic. A carload of fuckhead Arab males got into the lane next to me. I caught eye contact with one young'un in the back as he dragged on his cigarette. It wasn't friendly eye contact, obviously. They got in front of me and I tailgated them for all I was worth. Locked, I shouted to anyone who was listening. There would have been people listening. As I tracked the fuck out of them. I saw the driver looking jerkily into his rearview mirror. I screamed along to trap and drill music, feeling like a full gangster myself. Of course that move had consequences. When we were moving onto the freeway, these fucktards went out of the lane and roared along the shoulder to get back into the traffic further up. Run, motherfuckers. You just lost money by not driving near me the whole way. It got so much worse on the highway to Canberra. I was being pursued by all sorts. Skippies, Arabs, various fuckwit males. They just wanted to pass me, but it pissed me off nonetheless. A motorcycle even pulled up over ahead of me, then took off at such a clip after I'd passed him that he forgot to do up his pannier lid. Desperate. They were all desperate and angry, vicious, and smug, like they were actually physically capturing me, even though they weren't. I took the Sheepton turn off and they didn't seem to follow me. In a park, I went to a public toilet that I knew was always pretty clean. I decided to not go to the female cubicles, opting for the disability toilet instead, in case some women wanted to grab me. I wasn't putting anything past anyone. While I was in there, I heard a young skip male outside the door say over the phone, "She's in the toilet." I wondered if he was just talking about a woman who I saw with him. As I went past the general public female toilets, I ducked in there to use the hand soap. There was absolutely no one in there, so he had probably been talking about me. What the fuck were they going to do to me? Whatever it was, I'd foiled their plan again. As I pulled out onto the road, I saw a police rescue truck with sirens on, heading back along the way I'd come. For once, I didn't think those cops were unnecessarily coming after me. My fear of cops was gone now that I was back here. I took all the back roads to Wirra. It would have been too obvious if they'd have all followed me down those. So the super dorks could turn off my location, it seemed. For the second time in my life, I hugged those German shepherds like there was no tomorrow. I felt they'd protect me from the gangsters, the super dorks, the Pokemon players, maybe even from Billy if push came to shove. Who knew what was going to happen? Billy wasn't home. I was relieved. I parked the van up near the studio. I gave myself permission to have a full mentee bee. I hadn't had one yet. Hadn't even shed a tear for the death of my old life and this total plunge into my new one. A life that is no longer mine. A life that's dictated by super dorks. At least the North Koreans are owned by an actual experienced dictator. And if he was going to have someone kidnapped and or killed, he'd get it done. There'd be no dropping the plans right into my lap like we were in a badly written movie that had to explain every plot point to the viewer via very shit and unsophisticated dialogue. Though I said that I loved the full reveal, remember that I was suicidal at one point. I remember while I waited for dawn to come at the Loy, every motorcycle that sped by where the rider's face was covered in a full face helmet. I kind of hid behind concrete plant pots in case they planned to shoot me on the street. I now wished they'd shot me on the street. And because I'd been suicidal and faced down my own torture and death, I wielded the machete I'd bought in Catherine with Mandy and her boys. I had it ready when all the Western Sydney cunts were after me on the highway. I took it inside now. Something told me not to wave it around in the studio. Take it out bush and practice with it. I was ready to cut a prick or a bitch. I was ready to wave it around and have the cops come shoot me. That was an easier death than at the hands of so many gangsters. I went down by the lake, drank a sweet drink, and just cried and cried. The mentee bee part was hallucinating a possible scenario. I imagined that the police rescue truck was going to where all the chasers had ended up meeting. The super dorks had thrown my location to somewhere north up the highway, and some poor woman was mistaken for me and getting gang raped. The cops were breaking up a rape riot. How fucking grim of me to think like this. I also imagined the cops turning up here and telling me that I'd been being tracked. They'd finally gotten to the bottom of this. I wept tears of joy to be helped and understood by the cops. Finally. It was all fantastical, but it caused me to finally cry and feel relief, so I went with it. The fact it wasn't going to happen that way eventually hit me, and I went back to stealthily staunch mode. Billy came home later. I hadn't told her about the trip yet. I also hid my haircut from her with a hoodie. I wanted to see how much she knew of me without seeing me. I slept with the machete that night. The next day I got up to machete antics out in the bush, as Billy suddenly seemed to be going out to work in the day now. Avoiding me? Probably. I had a feeling that she didn't really have a job to go to in Canberra. I was her job. That night I came over to her house to tell my story. She didn't really want to sit with me, but she had to not give the game away. And you've given yourself a pretty dramatic haircut. How did she know I'd given it to myself? I could have gotten it done at a barber's. Billy listened but wasn't sympathetic. She was weird, weirder than usual. I theorised to her that this thing I was in was going to be a service that the super dorks offered to males to prevent their women from leaving them. Blackmailed IBA footage that, if uploaded, would invite rapists from all over. The woman wouldn't be able to prove her innocence because the invite had been generated from her own phone. Billy said, well, they obviously didn't want the first test case to invite police attention. She kind of joked about that. Could have been humouring me, but didn't really believe my story. Or she was basically giving it away because she could no longer handle having to act around me. I think it was the latter. She also slipped up when she said something about the IBA footage. You're a porn star, even though you're somehow not a porn star. She seemed to be on the side of all the dirty male cunts and considered me a porn star. I've never starred in a porno willingly. I've never gotten money for sexual services, camgirl services, anything like that. If I had have, then I certainly would have worked harder to keep it out of the wrong hands. I'd have had more control over it. I corrected her. I'm not a porn star. She was silent. Obviously, she thought I was a porn star. This next bit really gave Billy away. I said that society is fucked up because women are the natural rulers, but we're basically slaves to men. She said, that's not true. There are evil women in the world. There are female serial killers. I didn't dare argue with her because she's a nutjob. And also I realised that everything she says is being monitored when she's in convo with me. She has to parrot untrue sexist rhetoric for her own safety. She was able to always seem like a separatist feminist beforehand because they would have put that down to sucking me in. She's just a slave. And she's probably the female serial killer of which she speaks, yet she'll throw other female killers under a bus. There are good female serial killers who are vigilantes. Billy was obviously not that, if she was a murderer. Billy then suggested I go get work because I would get bored lying low here. I tried to protest as I was too nervous to go to work after the Dingleford thing. I was too nervous to go anywhere. There was no point. She wanted me back out in the world to measure my fear on her brainwave machine and to be kidnapped by gangsters. She expressly said that I shouldn't go back to Dingleford. I knew she didn't want me to try and get vengeance against that crew. They were all hired by her probably, or just employees like her. There was definitely a link to Vincent and young Billy. When I told Billy that there was another Billy working out in Dingleford, she replied, did she? Surely the reply to that would be, is there? I immediately started to suspect that Dingleford Billy chose a fake name, and that name was after this Billy. This Billy is such an egotist that she took that as a compliment. Dingleford Billy chose that name because she's shit scared of all the rapist males she's around, so chose the name of one of the safe characters in the plot. Similarly, why she chose to dress like and suck up to Ashley. Finally, she went on about how hard it was to be a good mother to her children, how she was trying, self-pitying nonsense that was justifying her receiving money from the super dorks and ruining my life. Oh, poor her. I was meant to feel empathy for her situation, or she wanted my forgiveness or something. Crazy, evil, narcissistic bitch. I slept with a machete next to me and got up to more machete antics in the bush during the next day. I was losing it, Apocalypse Now style. What did you expect me to do? On the last night that I was to sleep in that studio, I'd made up my mind to go and had packed the day before. I was so worried that that would be the night she'd let the gangsters come and get me, that I'd be murdered that night after a horrific gang rape that was, yes, you guessed it, live streamed. I placed a chair in front of the door with a weight on it and had balanced a glass on the edge of it so it would fall and wake me up. No one came. I was a nervous wreck the next day when I was going to leave. I put a knife in my belt, machete by my side in the van. I expected there to be a whole lot of gangsters waiting for me as I drove out. I was planning on stopping and taking them on with my machete. Let them shoot me, or let the cops show up and shoot me. I was ready to die. I wanted to die by my own chosen way, not theirs. I wasn't suicidal, just pure survival. There'd be no fucking rape. I mounted my GoPro on my head for protection. Only one car caught up to me and passed me on the way into Canberra. They didn't come into my lane in front of me, instead staying out in the passing lane. I knew this was because they saw the GoPro on my head. So they were either on a clandestine trip to Canberra or they were fully aware of me, knew they were doing the wrong thing by tracking me and wanting to stay out of the camera's way. This camera thing was certainly a security blanket.